WWII, the wooden dream ignored. September 15th, 1938. De Havilland's drawing offices in Hatfield, England. Rain lashes against the tall windows, turning the world outside into a grey smear. Inside, the air is thick with cigarette smoke and the scratch of pencils on paper. Geoffrey de Havilland leans over a cluttered desk, his fingers tracing the sleek lines of a blueprint that defies the steel and aluminum orthodoxy of modern aviation. The prototype sketch for what he's calling the DH. 98. A twin-engine bomber, fast as a fighter, built not from metal but from layers of birch plywood, like a giant Spitfire made of furniture. It's radical, unproven, and in the shadow of gathering storm clouds over Europe, it feels like a whisper against the roar of impending war. De Havilland's eyes, sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, flick to his chief designer, Ronald Bishop. "This could change everything," he mutters, voice low, as if the walls might betray them. Bishop nods, but there's tension in his shoulders. The Air Ministry's bureaucrats have already dismissed wooden planes as relics of the Great War. Aluminum is king. Wood is for training gliders, not machines to challenge the Luftwaffe. Yet here they are, pouring heart into this mossy, as the shop floor hands have started calling it in jest. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead mixes with the distant rumble of thunder, mirroring the unease in the room. Across the English Channel, Adolf Hitler's factories churn out Messerschmitt Bf 109s, their Merlin engines screaming promises of domination. Britain scrambles to rearm, but the clock ticks mercilessly. De Havilland knows this. He's flown in the last war, felt the whip of wind on biplanes that splintered like matchsticks under fire. Wood, he argues, is light. Strong if laminated right, balsa for the frame, birch for the skin, glued and molded into curves that metal forges can't match. No heavy riveting, no sparky welding that could ignite fuel lines. It's cheap too, using timber from home forests, while metal imports strain the Empire's purse. But the High Command sees folly. Lord Beaverbrook, the brash Minister of Aircraft Production, has his favourites, the Avro Lancaster in the works, the Halifax, all-metal behemoths for bombing runs. When de Havilland's team submits the proposal that crisp autumn day, it's met with polite rejection. Unorthodox, the memo reads from the Air Ministry. Lacks the durability for frontline service. Prioritise proven designs. It's a slap, delivered via typed letter on crisp Whitehall stationery. De Havilland crumples it in his fist, the paper crinkling like dry leaves. Bishop paces, frustration etching lines on his young face. "They don't see it," he says. "Speed over armour. Versatility. We could build it in furniture factories if we had to." You can almost feel the chill seeping through the cracks in the old hangar doors as winter sets in. By December, the rejections pile up. Another from the Chief of Air Staff, citing strategic impracticality. Hitler's Anschluss with Austria echoes in the newsreels, panzers rolling unopposed. Britain signs the Munich Agreement, Chamberlain waving his scrap of paper, but de Havilland smells blood. He rallies his engineers in late-night sessions, the scent of glue and varnish heavy in the air. They mock up scale models, wind tunnel tests in a drafty shed where gusts from the North Sea howl like banshees. The data sings, projected top speed of 400 miles per hour, range for deep strikes into Germany, payload for bombs or reconnaissance cameras. No defensive guns needed if it's too fast to catch, yet the doors stay shut. Funding trickles from private pockets, de Havilland's own savings. Loans from sympathetic industrialists. In the spring of 1939, as Poland's fate hangs in the balance, they build a wooden mock-up in secret, a skeletal frame that gleams under workshop lamps. Test pilots climb aboard mock cockpits, imagining the thrum of two Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, one 200 horsepower each, propellers slicing the air like scythes. But whispers reach the ministry. Amateurs playing with toys. The rejection stings deeper now, with war drums beating. Neville Chamberlain's government clings to appeasement, but de Havilland's team presses on, driven by a quiet fury. Imagine yourself there, in the dim light of the assembly hall, hands rough from sanding plywood. The first full-scale fuselage takes shape, 37 feet of elegant curves. Cockpit forward like a fighter's, bomb bay slung low. It's beautiful, almost fragile, but calculations prove it can take 12-pound bombs or even torpedoes later on. The Air Ministry's silence is deafening, broken only by a curt telegram in June. Project shelved. Redirect resources to hurricane production. De Havilland stares at it, jaw set. Hurricanes are vital, yes. 8. 303 Browning machine guns, folding wings for carriers, but they're interceptors, not the multi-role marvel he envisions. The Mossy could be bomber, fighter, pathfinder, even night intruder, slipping through flak like a ghost. As summer fades into the phony war, the team works underground, literally, experiments in hidden barns to evade prying eyes. Sabotage fears run high. German spies lurk in every shadow. One night, a prototype engine test roars to life, the Merlin's growl shaking the rafters, blue flames licking exhausts. It's alive, this wooden beast, but caged by indifference. De Havilland confides in Bishop over lukewarm tea. They'll beg for it when the bombs fall. Outside, air raid sirens wail in practice drills, the wind carrying the metallic tang of fear. By early 1940, as Norway falls and Dunkirk looms, the rejections evolve into reluctant interest. A back-channel nudge from Churchill, now First Lord of the Admiralty, whispers of potential. But High Command drags feet. Metal shortages bite, yet pride blinds them to Wood's virtues. The first airframe nears completion in a fevered push. Workers toiling through blackouts, the acrid smell of dope varnish mingling with sweat. It's a gamble, this rejected dream, forged in defiance. And as the Battle of Britain ignites that July, with Spitfires and hurricanes clawing the sky over the Channel, the Mossy's fate teeters on a knife's edge. Will the wooden wonder ever break free? If you want to dive deeper into these forgotten skies, subscribe to the channel. Breaking the sound barrier of doubt, November 25th, 1940. Hatfield Aerodrome, just north of London. The morning mist clings to the dew-kissed grass like a shroud, and the chill wind bites through the layers of woolen greatcoats worn by the cluster of engineers and test pilots gathered near the runway's edge. Geoffrey de Havilland stands with arms crossed, his breath fogging the air, eyes locked on the sleek form of the DH-98 prototype, W4050 they call her, taxiing slowly under the power of her twin Rolls-Royce Merlin Weitkin engines. The props carve lazy circles through the fog, a low growl building to a throaty rumble that vibrates in your chest, drowning out the distant wail of air raid warnings from the night before. This is no metal monster. Her skin gleams with the fresh coat of camouflage paint over birch plywood, deceptively fragile-looking, 37 feet from nose to tail, wings spanning 54 feet like outstretched arms, ready to embrace the sky. Inside the cockpit, Geoffrey de Havilland's son John straps in, his hands steady on the control column, despite the knot of tension in his gut. At 25, he's no stranger to the air, flew Spitfires in training, but this wooden bird feels different, alive almost, the laminated frame flexing subtly under his weight. The radio crackles to life. Tower, Mossy 1, requesting clearance for maiden flight. Clearance granted, terse and efficient, from a control hut scarred by recent bomb craters. The Luftwaffe's raids have scarred the landscape. Craters pockmarking fields where once cows grazed, now replaced by anti-aircraft batteries squatting like iron sentinels. John throttles up, the Merlins spooling to life with a surge that presses him back into the seat. Tires squeal on the wet tarmac as she accelerates faster than expected. the wooden undercarriage absorbing bumps with a whisper where metal would clank. You can sense the collective breath held by the ground crew, Ronald Bishop wiping sweat from his brow, a cigarette dangling unlit from his lips. Doubts swirl thicker than the mist. Will the glue hold under stress? Will the plywood warp in the slipstream? The Air Ministry observers, clipboard in hand, mutter among themselves, their faces etched with the skepticism that's haunted the project since '38. Reckless, one whispers, a bespectacled major from the Directorate of Technical Development. If she splinters mid-air, it'll be on de Havilland's head. But Geoffrey Sr. watches unblinking, his mind replaying the rejections, the nights of calculation by oil lamp light. At 70 knots, the tail lifts, and W450 floats free, climbing gently into the overcast sky. The sound shifts, a smooth whoosh replacing the runway's roar as she banks left over the Thames Valley, engines purring at 3,000 revolutions per minute. John levels off at 2,000 feet, the altimeter needle spinning lazily. Visibility is poor, but instruments glow steadily. Airspeed climbing to 220, then 250 miles per hour. No vibrations, no ominous creaks from the wooden spars. The cockpit smells of fresh varnish and hot oil, the perspex canopy offering a crystal view of the patchwork fields below, dotted with barrage balloons swaying like silver whales. He pushes the stick forward, diving to test the airframe's integrity. G-forces tug at his flight suit, but the Mossy responds like a fighter, agile and forgiving, her balsa wood core absorbing stresses that would buckle aluminum. Back on the ground, the radio bursts with John's voice, calm but laced with exhilaration. She's handling like a dream, no flutter, no issues, climbing to 10,000. The Major's clipboard slips from his fingers, eyes widening as the dot of the aircraft circles overhead, a shadow against the breaking clouds. De Havilland allows a rare smile, clapping Bishop on the shoulder. "Told you," he says simply, the words carrying the weight of 2 years' defiance. The flight lasts 38 minutes. Circuits, stalls, a gentle loop that draws gasps from the onlookers. No armament yet. Just the bare airframe, but her speed touches 382 miles per hour in level flight, faster than any bomber in Britain's arsenal. The Hurricanes, scrambling from nearby Duxford to intercept German raiders, top out at 340. The Mossy leaves them eating her prop wash. As John brings her down, flares popping from the undercarriage, the landing is butter smooth, tires kissing the grass without a skip. The engines wind down to a whisper, and the ground crew swarms, checking for cracks in the plywood skin. None. Not a splinter. Bishop kneels, running fingers over the warm fuselage, feeling the pulse of residual heat. "She's a marvel," he breathes, voice thick. But the Air Ministry men aren't convinced yet. Reports will note promising but unproven, demanding modifications, strengthened bomb bay doors, provision for 4 20mm Hispano cannons in the nose for the fighter variant. De Havilland nods, knowing the game. They've bought time, but production orders remain elusive. Churchill's memos from the Admiralty hint at interest for maritime recon, but the High Command prioritizes the Wellington and Stirling, their 4-engine hulks, belching smoke over the Ruhr. Word spreads like wildfire through the shadowed corridors of Whitehall. By December, as snow blankets the aerodrome and the Blitz hammers London, Coventry's cathedral reduced to rubble, sirens howling through blackout nights, the Mossy undergoes refinements. John de Havilland logs hours in W4050, pushing her limits. Night flights where the Merlin's exhausts trail blue fire, evading searchlights that sweep the sky like accusatory fingers. One test sees her fitted with cameras, slipping low over mock targets at 300 feet, the plywood blending into the terrain like camouflage bark. Speed is her armor. No need for the heavy turrets that slow the Blenheims, easy prey for Bf 109s. Yet challenges mount. A Merlin overheats during a high-altitude run, forcing an emergency landing that shreds a tire, minor, but enough for critics to pounce. Unreliable, the memos claim, ignoring the wooden frame's survival. De Havilland's team iterates in feverish secrecy, barns converted to workshops where carpenters wield planes alongside riveters. They add radar masts for Pathfinder roles, experiment with pressurized cockpits using scavenged oxygen gear. Funding creeps in, $10 from the Ministry for a second prototype, W4051, but strings attached. Prove versatility or face cancellation. Imagine yourself in the cockpit now, John's co-pilot on a January 41 sortie, the wind whistling through seams as you streak over the North Sea. German convoys hug the Danish coast, E-boats darting like minnows, but the mossy ghosts passed, too swift for flak bursts that bloom like dirty fireworks. Back at base, tea steams in tin mugs while debriefs drag on, the scent of avgas mingling with pipe tobacco. The Battle of Britain fades into the Atlantic convoy's grind, U-boats wolf-packing merchant ships, but whispers of the Mossy's potential reach fighter command. Air Chief Marshal Dowding, weary from the summer's dogfights, requests a demo. In February, W450 dazzles at Boscombe Down, the RAF's test ground. Pilots from No. 105 Squadron climb aboard, their faces lighting up as she surges to 400 miles per hour, outpacing the Luftwaffe's Ju-88s in mock pursuits. A wooden wonder, one squadron leader quips, but orders lag. Only a trickle of airframes authorized, furniture factories retooled in Hertfordshire to churn out fuselages from birch imported from Canada. Sabotage attempts, a fire in a glue vat blamed on fifth columnists, slow progress. But the team's resolve hardens like the plywood under pressure. By spring, as Rommel's Africa Corps sands the desert and Barbarossa looms on the Eastern Front, the Mossy earns her spurs in trials. A photo recon variant, PR-1, with elongated nose for F-24 cameras, maps German airfields undetected, High Command's Frost thaws, Lord Beaverbrook, now minister again, grumbles approval for 50 units. But production bottlenecks bite, Merlin engines diverted to Spitfires, skilled woodworkers conscripted. De Havilland paces the hangar, frustration boiling as another raid shakes the roof, glass tinkling like distant chimes. Still, the skies call. In a clandestine hop, John pushes W4050 across the channel, skimming waves to photograph Brest's U-boat pens. Flak peppers the air, shells bursting close enough to rattle the canopy, but speed saves her. Back in 20 minutes, films intact. The images reveal concrete pens hiding Type 7 submarines, intel that feeds Bomber Command's hammers. It's proof, irrefutable, yet full sanction hovers just out of reach. As May 1941 dawns, with Hesse's bizarre flight to Scotland and Crete falling to Fallschirmjäger, the Mossy's engines rev for operational debut. Rejected no more but not fully embraced, she strains at the leash, ready to rule the hostile heavens. What secrets will she uncover next, and at what cost to her wooden heart? September 27, 1941. RAF Marham, Norfolk, England. Dawn creeps over the flatlands like a reluctant intruder, painting the dew-slick runways in pale gold. The air hangs heavy with the scent of damp earth and aviation fuel, a faint tang of cordite from last night's practice shoots lingering on the breeze. Hangar doors groan open, revealing the first operational mosquitoes, PR. One variants, their elongated noses bulging with F-24 cameras, plywood fuselages painted in the mottled greens and browns of night camouflage. No bombs today, just eyes in the sky. But the ground crew moves with the precision of men who know every rivet and glue joint could mean life or death. Wing Commander George "Gibby" Gibson, CO of No. 105 Squadron, paces the tarmac, his flight boots squelching in puddles, eyes scanning the horizon where the North Sea meets a bruised sky. Inside the lead aircraft, MM-209, Pilot Officer Charles Raphael Pip Phillips settles into the navigator's seat, his fingers tracing the edge of the plotting board while squadron leader Frank Spam Spot starts the Port Merlin engine. The throaty cough builds to a steady purr, vibrating through the wooden frame like a heartbeat. At 28, Spot's seen action in Blenheims over Dunkirk. Slow, vulnerable crates that drew flak like magnets. But this Mossy feels different, eager, her 54-foot wings flexing subtly as if impatient for the sky. The radio operator's voice crackles from the ops room. All clear for photo recon on Bremen. Weatherfront incoming. Keep it low. Spot thumbs the throttle, the starboard Merlin joining in a symphony of power. Props blurring into silver discs that whip the morning mist into eddies. You grip the armrests, imagining the rush as the brakes release and MM-209 surges forward, wooden undercarriage thumping over the grass strip before lifting smoothly at 100 knots. No heavy bomb load to drag her down, just fuel tanks topped off with 440 gallons of 100 octane, enough for a 1,000-mile round trip. Below, the fens of East Anglia blur into patchwork, dikes glinting like silver threads under the climbing sun. The Luftwaffe's raids have eased since the Blitz, but U-boats still prowl the shipping lanes, and intelligence whispers of new Focke-Wulf factories churning out FW-190s in the heart of the Reich. This mission mapped them undetected before Bomber Command's Wellingtons pound the sights. Over the channel, the Mossy levels at 20, Schoesern feet. The Merlin's loafing at 500 RPM, airspeed steady at 280 miles per hour. Spot eases the nose down as they cross the Dutch coast, slipping into enemy airspace like a shadow. Flak batteries dot the dunes, but at this height they're blind. Searchlights from Texel Island probe the clouds in vain, their beams slicing empty air. Phillips snaps photos through the oblique cameras, the shutter clicking rhythmically as Bremen looms. The vast Blom and Voss yards where U-boat hulls take shape, cranes swinging like skeletal arms against the Weser River. No escort needed. The Mossy's speed is her shield, outrunning any Bf-109 that might scramble from Deelen airfield. But complacency kills. As they bank for the return leg, a patrolling WWII spots the glint of canopy glass. Its engines snarl to life, diving from 15 suzerain feet, 20mm cannons winking in the sun. Tracers arc past, close enough to hear the whip crack through the thin perspex. Spot yanks the stick, the Mossy responding with fighter-like agility. Wooden spars groaning but holding as she rolls inverted, Merlins bellowing under full throttle. You feel the G-forces pressing, blood rushing to your head, as Phillips calls bearings, bogey at 2 o'clock low, closing fast. The Ju-88's pilot, a veteran from KG-30, presses the attack, shells stitching the sky. One round clips the starboard wingtip, splintering plywood in a shower of shards, but the frame absorbs it. No fire. No catastrophic failure like the aluminum Lancasters that crumple under hits. Spot dives to wave-top height, salt spray flecking the windshield as the North Sea churns below. The Ju-88 can't follow without ditching. Its heavier frame wallows in the turns. Engines screaming at 800 RPM, the Mossy touches 390 miles per hour, props churning foam in her wake. The pursuer peels off, radioing futile warnings to flak sites along the Frisian Islands, bursts bloom astern, black puffs that rock the airframe, but Spot weaves through them, the wooden bird dancing on the wind. Phillips's hands fly over the controls, resetting cameras mid-evasion, films intact, mission gold. Back over England, the adrenaline fades to exhaustion as they touch down at Marham, tires smoking on the runway. Ground crews swarm, patching the wing with fresh birch sheets and glue, the acrid scent of epoxy mixing with sea brine. Word of the feat ripples through Fighter Command like a shockwave. Air Vice Marshal Trafford Lee Mallory, overseeing 11 Group, pores over the developed prints in a smoky briefing room. crisp images of submarine pens, assembly lines, even troop movements near Wilhelmshaven. "Bloody miracle," he mutters, stubbing out a cigarette. The Air Ministry, once dismissive, now clamours for more. By October, production ramps, furniture makers in Salisbury and Coventry churning out fuselages at 5 a week, Merlins allocated from the Spitfire pool, despite grumbles from Hawker engineers. Number 105 Squadron gets 6 more Mossies, fitted with bomb sights for daylight raids, a role suicidal for slower bombers, but perfect for the wooden wonder. November brings the first strikes. On the 7th, 4 Mossies, led by Wing Commander Gibson, lift from Marham under cover of low cloud, bound for the Gestapo HQ in Oslo. Each carries 4 500-pound bombs in the ventral bay, doors sealing flush to maintain that lethal speed. The fjords unfold below, sheer cliffs guarding the target like natural ramparts. Flak from anti-aircraft sites around the harbour erupts as they stoop at 300 feet. The lead aircraft's bombs tumbling free with a thud that echoes through the cockpit. Explosions ripple across the waterfront, shattering windows in the grey stone building, flames licking up as secondary blasts from fuel dumps ignite. A Bf-109 scramble from Fornebu is too late. The Mossies are ghosts again, outbound at 350 miles per hour, evading the net. But glory exacts a toll. On the return, tail-end Charlie, MM-238, takes a 37mm round through the fuselage. The pilot, Flying Officer Tom Warren, nurses her home on one Merlin, the wounded aircraft limping into the circuit as crewmen on the ground ready fire hoses. Warren's co-pilot, hit in the leg, grimaces through the pain, applying a tourniquet amid the chaos of flickering instruments. She lands hard, undercarriage collapsing in a splinter of wood and metal. But both men walk away, proof of the Mossie's resilience, her laminated skin flexing where metal would shear. De Havilland's team iterates overnight, reinforced longerons, self-sealing fuel tanks from Blenheim salvage. Winter grips Britain, snow dusting the dispersal pans as squadrons rotate. The Mossie evolves, Mach-second variants with AI Mach-fort radar for night fighting, 4 303 Brownings in the nose barking at He-111s over the Wash. In December, Photo Recon runs over Berlin Yield U-boat pens at Lorient, intel that guides the RAF's first 100 bomber raid. High Command's rejections are ancient history. Beaverbrook boasts in Parliament of the plane that builds itself, factories in Leavesden producing 30 a month by New Year's. Yet risks mount. Luftwaffe aces like Marseille in the desert adapt, and a Mossie from number 464 Squadron splinters over Dieppe in a ferry flight, pilot lost to the Channel's cold embrace. Imagine yourself strapped in for the next dawn patrol, the Merlin's warmth seeping through the seat as you climb into the fray. The wooden heart beats stronger, but the Reich's hunters sharpen their claws. How long can speed outrun the storm gathering over Europe? February 14th, 1942, RAF Ford, Sussex, England. The blackout cloaks the airfield in inky darkness, broken only by the faint glow of hooded lanterns, bobbing like fireflies as ground crew hustle around the dispersed Mossies of number 23 Squadron. The wind off the Channel carries the salty bite of impending rain, whipping tent flaps and rattling the corrugated iron Nissan huts where pilots huddle over maps stained with T-rings. Inside one, the air is thick with the aroma of boiled cabbage from the mess and the sharp tang of unwashed flight suits, mingled with the ever-present whiff of 100-octane fuel seeping from the tarmac. Wing Commander Bertie Hoare, a lanky veteran with a scarred cheek from a pre-war crash, briefs his night fighters, Mach-17 Mossies, their bulbous radomes, housing AI Mach-4 radar sets that pierce the void like electronic eyes. "Jerry's are probing again," he says, voice gravelly from too many smokes. He-111's slipping in low over the shipping lanes. Your job, find 'em, fix 'em, finish 'em. No mercy. In the cockpit of NF-D, W4087, Flight Lieutenant Richard Dickey. Richard straps in beside his radar operator, Sergeant Bill Taffy Jones, the wooden seat creaking under their combined weight. The Merlins cough to life at 2200 hours, a twin rumble that builds to a predatory snarl, exhausts glowing cherry red in the gloom. No bombs tonight, just 4 20-meter Hispano cannons in the nose, loaded with 150 rounds each, and 2 Kaiser 303 Brownings for good measure. The canopy slides shut with a solid thunk, sealing them in a cocoon of instruments. The fishbone radar display, flickering green, altimeter steady at sea level, the control column slick with oil from last night's sortie. Richard throttles up, the Mossy lurching forward on her tricycle undercarriage, props slicing the misty air as she lifts off into the starless night, climbing to 15,000 feet where the cold bites through gloves. You can feel the thrum in your bones as the Merlins settle into cruise, 800 RPM, pushing her to 300 miles per hour. The plywood frame humming smoothly. No rivets to vibrate loose, like in the bow fighters they've replaced. Below, the English coast fades to black, replaced by the moon-silvered waves, where convoys crawl like glowing worms, their destroyer escorts zigzagging under the threat of S-boats. Taffy's voice crackles over the intercom. Contacts at 11 o'clock, Angels 12, range 20 miles, 3 bandits, Heinkels by the blips. The radar paints them clear, Luftwaffe intruders from KG-4, probing for weaknesses in the convoy screens, their radial BMW engines a distant drone on the wind. Richard eases the stick, the Mossy banking with effortless grace, her 54-foot wings cutting the air like a scalpel. No heavy armor slows her. Wood's lightness lets her dance where metal birds lumber. Descent to interception height, 12,000 feet. The Heinkels loom on the radar, fat silhouettes against the horizon, their defensive gunners scanning futilely. Richard closes to 500 yards, the Mossy's speed masking her approach until it's too late. Cannons blaze, a stuttering roar that shakes the airframe, 20-millimeter shells hammering the lead bomber's starboard engine. Flames erupt, orange blossoms in the night as the He-111 yaws violently, crew bailing out in silk parachutes that bloom like jellyfish. The second bandit breaks left, but Taffy vectors true. Steady, skip, right 3 degrees. Another burst rakes its fuselage, plywood and fabric shredding like paper, the bomber spiraling into the sea in a geyser of foam and fire. The third, wiser, dives for the deck, but the Mossy follows, radar locking through the clutter of waves. Tracers from the Heinkels turret whip past, one pinging off the propeller hub, but Richard rolls inverted. G-forces pinning you to the harness as he loops underneath for a deflection shot. The kill is clean, wings folding back in a fatal tuck, plunging stern first into the drink. Back at Ford by 0200, the debrief is terse. 2 confirmed, probable on the third. Horse slaps Richard's shoulder, a rare grin cracking his face. That's how you rule the night, lads. Elbun, but elation sours quick. Sister Squadron number 85 loses a Mossy to flak over Ostend. The wreckage washing up on Dover beaches, pilot and operator gone. De Havilland's team pores over the report in Hatfield, iterating, better de-icing boots from rubber molds, strengthened radar housings to withstand bird strikes at speed. Production surges, Leavesden factory now spits out 50 Mossies a month. Variants multiplying like rabbits. FB, 6 fighter bombers with rocket rails under wings, NF. 3 night fighters with uprated Merlins, 76 for high-altitude intercepts. Spring thaws into boulder ops. April sees number 105 Squadron's Mossies, now BI-4 bombers, striking the diesel-electric works at Kiel, 4 500-pounders each, slamming the docks amid a storm of 88mm flak. Pilot officer Ken Wallace, later of dams busting fame, nurses his bird home with a holed wing, the wooden skin patched en route with canvas and dope. She takes punishment like a champ, he logs, the entry smudged with sweat. High Command bows deeper. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, Bomber Command's iron-willed chief, requisitions Pathfinder Mossies for his area bombing campaign. Mincraes, fitted with H-2S ground mapping radar, led Wellingtons and Lancasters to Essen, their target markers, red, green, yellow flares, cascading like deadly fireworks over the Krupp works. One night in May, a Mossie Pathfinder evades a night-fighting Ju-88 over the Ruhr, her speed turning pursuit into a futile chase, returning with bomb doors shredded but markers dropped true. Yet the Reich fights back. In June, as Tobruk falls to Rommel and the 1,000-bomber raid hammers Cologne, Luftwaffe aces adapt. FWW-190s with drop tanks prowling the Bay of Biscay, hunting RAF ferries. A Mossie from No. 264 Squadron tangles with Major Hans-Joachim Marseille's wingmen, cannons trading fire in a twisting dogfight at 20,000 feet. The wooden bird's agility shines, tight turns that bleed enemy speed, but a lucky burst severs a control cable, forcing a dead-stick glide to the Azores. The pilot walks away, but the loss stings. De Havilland reinforces aileron linkages, drawing from Spitfire designs. Summer peaks in audacity. Operation Biting, the Bruneval raid, sees paratroopers dropped from Whitley's. But Mossies provide cover. Photo Recon PR. IVs mapping the radar site pre-drop, their F-24 cameras capturing Würzburg arrays in stark detail. Post-raid, FB. VIs rocket the clifftop guns, 60-pound warheads blooming in white-hot fury, silencing batteries that could have shredded the gliders. Churchill cables praise, precision unmatched. By August, as the 8th Air Force's B-17s arrive from America, Mossies escort them on shakedown runs, their Merlins outpacing P-38 Lightnings in climbs. No. 418 Squadron's jungle intruders prowl occupied France by night, strafing trains with 303 fire, derailing ammunition cars bound for the Eastern Front. One sortie bags a staff car, likely a general's, tires bursting in sparks, the explosion lighting the Normandy hedgerows. Human cost mounts, though. In September, over Bremen, a Pathfinder Mossie takes 37mm fire. The crew bails out over the target, parachutes drifting into German hands. Interrogations yield nothing. The Wooden Wonder's secrets stay glued tight. De Havilland's son, John, now test-flying FB variants, pushes a prototype to 415 mph with clipped wings, but crashes in fog near Salisbury, the Mossie cartwheeling in a splinter of birch. The loss hits hard. Funeral under rainy skies, engineers vowing refinements. Production hits 100 a month by autumn, Canadian factories joining the fray, shipping airframes across the Atlantic in crates disguised as furniture. As Dieppe sands run red with Canadian blood in August, Mossie's ferry commandos, their speed dodging coastal batteries. Imagine yourself in the bomb bay, lashed to the bulkhead as she skips waves at 50 feet, Merlins drowning out the surf. The Reich's factories strain, Fu-190s rule the day, but nights belong to the Mossie, her radar eyes unblinking. Yet whispers from ultra-decrypts hint at Me-262 jets on the horizon, shadows lengthening over the wooden rain. October brings the first cookie trials, 4 100-pound blockbusters slung under Mossie bellies for precision drops on U-boat pens. The strain tests the frame, glue joints weeping under G-loads, but she holds. Harris eyes them for dambusters precursors, the skies teetering on greater tempests. How far will this rejected bird fly before the jets claw back the night? January 16th, 1943. RAF Whiten, Huntingdonshire, England. The winter fog rolls thick over the dispersal points, muting the growl of Merlin engines as they idle in the pre-dawn chill. Icicles fringe the hangar eaves, and the ground crew's breaths plume like smoke signals, their gloved hands slick with frost as they torque the last nuts on the bomb racks of a dozen FB, 6 Mossies from No. 487 Squadron. The air reeks of dope varnish and hydraulic fluid, undercut by the faint, acrid bite of cordite from yesterday's gunnery range. Wing Commander Leonard Cheshire, his face gaunt from months of ops, strides the line of aircraft, briefing his New Zealand crews in clipped tones. "Tonight's the real show," he says, eyes hard as flint. "Dams first, then the valleys. Precision, or we all buy it." These aren't pathfinders. They're the Hammer, each mossy laden with a 4,000-pound blockbuster bomb, the beast slung low in the ventral bay, straining the wooden spars but promising ruin on the Ruhr's industrial heart. In the cockpit of FB-6 HR-226, Flight Lieutenant Wally Hammond settles beside his bomb-aimer, Sergeant Mick Martin, veteran of Blenheim raids, now reborn in wood. The Merlins sputter to life at 22:30 hours, a twin thunder that scatters roosting crows from the hedgerows, props whipping the fog into swirling ghosts. No radar tonight, just moonlight and Mark I eyeballs, the H2S set humming softly on the panel. Hammond advances the throttles, the Mossy lunging forward on her retractable gear, lifting off into the murk with a grace that belies her load. You sense the pull of gravity as she climbs, the airframe flexing under the weight, plywood creaking like old floorboards, but holding true, the laminated birch stronger than steel in tension. Below, the fens give way to the wash, convoys wakes silver threads in the dark, U-boats' ghosts still haunting the depths despite the Mossy's earlier hunts. The flight to Germany is a gauntlet of nerves. Over the Heligoland bight, flak from Borkum Island probes upward, shells bursting in lazy orange puffs that light the clouds like hellish lanterns. Hammond weaves at 200 feet, salt spray from the North Sea flecking the canopy, the Merlins at full chat. 600 RPM, pushing 370 miles per hour, despite the drag. Martin's voice cuts the intercom static. Target in sight, Eder Dam, dead ahead. The massive concrete arc looms, a black wall against the moonlit reservoir, guarded by 88mm batteries that cough fire. The squadron stoops in trail, bombs released in sequence, the Mossy's bay doors yawning open with a hydraulic whine. The first blockbuster tumbles free, a shadow vanishing into the night, followed by a thunderclap that shakes the earth, water erupting in a geyser. The dam's wall cracking like eggshell under the blow. But the Luftwaffe wakes. Ju-88 night fighters from NJG-1 scramble from Deelen, their Liechtenstein radar sniffing the intruders. One shadows HR-226, 20mm tracers, lacing the tail, splintering the rudder in a hail of birch shards. Hammond rolls hard, the G-forces slamming you into the seat. Wooden frame groaning but unyielding, no buckling like the aluminum Halifaxes that litter the fields below. Martin calls the vector, "Break left, bogies overshooting." The Mossy dives to treetop height, clipping pines over the Edersee as the pursuer stalls, crashing in flames. Only half the dams breach fully, Myrna holds, but the breach at Eder floods valleys, drowning turbines and rail lines, crippling steel production for weeks. Back at Whiten by dawn, the survivors limp in, one Mossy belly landing with a holed fuselage, crew extracting amid the steam of ruptured tanks. Cheshire tallies the cost. 3 aircraft down, but the raid's intel, gleaned from pre-strike PR-15 photos, proves the Mossy's worth, her speed turning suicide into scalpel strikes. Word electrifies bomber command. By spring, as the 8th Air Force's B-17s hammer from East Anglia, Mossy's carve niches, FB. VIs escorting fortresses over Bremen, their cannons raking FW-190s in swirling furballs at 25,000 feet. Number 464 Squadron's intruders prowl the Low Countries by night, rockets and bombs derailing V-1 launch sites in the Pas-de-Calais. Pilot Officer Guy Gibson, now with 617 Squadron's Lancasters, borrows Mossy's for low-level runs, their wooden skins blending into moonlit forests. In May, over Peenemünde, a photo-recon Mossy PR-34 snaps the V-2 assembly halls, cameras whirring at 400 miles per hour, evading Me-109Gs that claw the sky. The films reach Bletchley Park, ultra-decrypts confirming the threat. Harris unleashes 600 bombers, but it's the Mossy's eyes that guide the hammer. Summer 1943 sees evolution. De Havilland's Hatfield shops birth the NFE. 17th, Merlin's 84-85 with two-stage superchargers for 30-0-foot intercepts, radar masts sleeker to cut drag. Number 85 Squadron tangles with Do-217s over the Bay of Biscay, AI MiG-8s locking through storm clouds, cannons barking in the thin air. Sergeant Jones, now a warrant officer, vectors a kill. Splash 1 going down in flames. The victory staves off losses, but attrition bites. A Mossy from number 219 Squadron splinters on a Ju-88's ramming attack over the Ruhr, pilot's ghost haunting the squadron bar with tales of the wooden bird's last twist. D-Day looms. June 1944, Mossy's swarm Normandy's beaches, WWIIs from number 305 Polish Squadron rocketing gun emplacements at Ouistreham, 57mm warheads blooming amid concrete bunkers. Speed lets them strafe and vanish before 88s traverse. One pilot, flying officer Tadeusz Kotowski, bags a Panther tank column near Caen. 303 fire-igniting fuel tanks in chain reaction fireballs. Behind the lines, wooden warriors of number 487 disrupt rail nets. Bombs cratering tracks at Aulnay-sur-Odon, delaying panzer reinforcements. Losses mount. Flak shreds a wing over Falaise. Crew bailing into German lines. But repairs are swift. Carpenters gluing patches in field tents. The scent of fresh birch a comfort amid the mud and cordite. By autumn, as Market Garden falters in Arnhem streets, Mossy's hunt V2 sites. Operation Crossbow, PR. 34s map the Mittelwerk tunnels under Kohnstein Mountain, revealing slave labor horrors in crisp negatives. Bomber escorts follow, but Mossy's lead, FB. 50s with 500-pounders precision bombing vents, collapsing entrances. In December over London, buzz bombs streak overhead, but number 96 Squadron's NF-30s, Merlin 76s tuned for 430 mm intercept at 20,000 feet, cannons downing Phi 103s mid-flight, wreckage tumbling like fiery comets. The human toll. A radar op ejects over the Thames, rescued sodden but alive, whispering of the Mossy's forgiving stall. 1945 dawns with vengeance as the Ardennes offensive bleeds in Bastogne snow, Mossy's support. Pathfinders marking bridges at Remagen, photo recons tracking SS columns retreating east. In the Pacific, FBVs ferry to Darwin, striking Japanese shipping off Timor. Merlin's outrunning Zeros in hit-and-run raids. De Havilland's team peaks production at 150 a month, Canadian plants shipping to the Far East. But the jets arrive, Me-262s scream from Marianehe, 30mm cannons outranging. ANF 36 Mossy from number 219 tangles with one over Berlin, radar guiding a desperate stern chase. But shells rip the tail. The pilot nurses her down in a field, wood smoking. VE Day, May 8th. Whiten again. Merlin silent on the pans. Crews toasting with pilfered schnapps. Over 7, 00 Mossy's built, from bombers to trainers. Versatile as de Havilland dreamed. Losses, 1, Zuren airframes, but her speed saved thousands, from D-Day drops to Hiroshima's shadow runs. Geoffrey de Havilland, greying at the victory parade, reflects on rejections turned triumph. The wooden wonder fades into museums, but her echo lingers in the wind, proof that defiance rules the skies, even after the guns fall quiet.